So, listening to the Raising Good Humans podcast, and the host is saying that she recently had an alcohol researcher on the show explaining how harmful it is and that there's no value basically in drinking alcohol. And the podcast host said that her audience, her community, is pretty chilled out normally, pretty zen. But in this episode, she had a lot of angry responses of people who are drinkers, not sharing the same view as the researcher that was telling them that alcohol is not great. If you're drinking, it's not going to be great for your children, right? So this is really interesting. So this one issue of alcohol creates such a kickback. I was in Latvia working the other day, and similarly a co-worker who drinks alcohol said to me, so she's a drinker, why is it when people say they don't drink that they get such a vociferous response from some people who do? Why, she said to me, do they get angry? Like, they don't get angry when I tell them I don't drink celery juice, but they get angry if I tell them that I don't drink alcohol. She was referring to periods of time when she didn't drink, right? So I want to answer that here in wake of the response on the Raising Good Human podcast, and also my friend asking me this question. And I want to share my view, right? And I want to start by saying, if you are someone who drinks alcohol, it is very likely, and you really love it, and you have no intention of stopping drinking, it's very likely that nothing that I say will land. And if anything, it will really annoy you, like it did to the podcast guests on Raising Good Humans. But I just urge you to try to get into a state of self and to get into a state of curiosity. And instead of getting angry, try to ask some questions. Ask me some questions. Get into a dialogue. Share your experience with me, and we can have a dialogue about it. But to get straight into anger, we're not going to really learn anything, right? So what do I think is going on? Why is it that people get very angry and protective and defensive when somebody who doesn't drink talks about that? Well, I believe that as human beings, particularly in Western society, that we are designed from birth to drink alcohol. And I believe this cultural phenomenon, this system that we have, is invisible, and you don't see it, and that is the problem, right? And I used to call this the invisible, violent, and dominant belief system, but it's a bit of a mouthful. So I now call it the liquid lie, okay? So if you look around today, to spend today looking around and listening, really get tuned into your senses to see how often you witness and you experience or you hear or you see anything related to alcohol. And you'll find that it is everywhere, okay? I said to my daughter the other day, you're not going to drink beer when you grow up, you? And she said, oh no, I'm not going to drink beer. Phew. I'm going to drink wine and champagne, she said, right? This is a 7-year-old whose father doesn't drink, where there's no alcohol in the house. Yet she, and our controls around TV and all that kind of stuff, social media, tablets, electrical stuff, it's very stringent. Yet here she is at 7 years of age, saying that she is going to drink wine and champagne, not beer. And this is an aspect of the liquid lie. It was her last day at school yesterday, and I asked her what presents Mrs. Layden, her teacher, got, and she said, alcohol, right? Like, that is a part of the liquid lie. Jesus turned water into wine, apparently. Santa Claus is left a snifter of whiskey or a can of lager at Christmas, right? Our children are grown up and raised to experience fun family occasions, even their own birthdays, where adults are drinking alcohol. So how does this happen? Because when you flip this over, the World Health Organization show that alcohol is responsible for 3.3 million deaths a year. And that is more than war, murder, and terrorism combined. And it is also a contributory factor to over 200 illnesses and diseases. So if something this devastating causes so much trouble, why is it that we all celebrate it and think it is glorious? It is Saturday today here in Cardiff in Wales, and the vast majority of the adult population will be waking up this morning really excited that tonight they're going to spend their hard-earned cash on this substance which they're going to drink, which is going to make them absent from their self, disconnected from their self, disconnected from other people, and it's going to and eventually they're going to either puke it up or piss it down the drain. Last night, Friday night, when we went out for pizza, we joined some friends. My friend was out of it, he was really drunk, with his kids. I couldn't connect with him. I couldn't wait to get away from him because he wasn't even able to look at me straight. As I walked home, I saw 5 different piles of vomit on the floor. And this is all before 7 o'clock. You know, so how does this happen? It happens because at a really deep level, in order to consume a poison that kills 3.3 million people a year, the human body needs a defense mechanism. It needs a defense mechanism that allows the human body to consume this poison and keep approval with society. And I call this the 5 ends of justification. So this liquid lie that we're designed from birth to drink alcohol, it actually is based on the rules that drinking alcohol is normal, drinking alcohol is natural, drinking alcohol is necessary, drinking alcohol is nice, and drinking alcohol is noble. And we drill those 5 ends of justification into our psyche to create a belief system that is what alcohol is like for us. And it is so embedded in our life, so embedded in our cultural systems, that if you have been raised and born without a secure attachment style, with trauma and issues in childhood, then you are going to have massive problems when you're older extracting yourself from the liquid lie, right? Because a lot of people are born with this sense and need for approval from other people. They don't feel safe in their own skin. They don't feel safe in their environment. They don't feel safe amongst people because they don't have high self-esteem. So they try to find that safety in the approval of others, okay? Now, when you're a kid, all you want to be is an adult, right? All you want to be is an adult. And if you look around and you see all your adults are drinking alcohol, and you look around and see all your peers who don't want to be kids anymore, they want to be adults, who want to drink alcohol and are drinking alcohol, then it is really, really difficult for you to not do the same thing if you are seeking their approval. And I know when I was a kid in school, you did everything you could in your power to remain in the tribe, right? You could not step out of the tribe. So if all your friends were drinking alcohol, for example, there is no way you could quit drinking alcohol. Because if you quit drinking alcohol, you would actually be ostracized from the group. And even more than that, you would be ridiculed, you'd be embarrassed, you'd be shamed, you'd be picked on, you'd be bullied. So what tends to happen with a lot of people is they drink alcohol even when they don't want to drink alcohol. And the reason they're drinking it is because they need to remain in the group. But all of this stuff is happening very, very subconsciously, okay? Very, very subconsciously. And this is where the anger comes from, right? Because you need this defense mechanism, this anger, this rage, this protective mechanism. When somebody comes along like me and says, I don't drink alcohol, alcohol has 0 value. It's really difficult for someone who's drinking alcohol, who wants to be a good human, who wants to be a good parent, who is alcohol reliant, which means they cannot stop drinking alcohol, right? And so many gazillion people in the world are alcohol reliant and aren't even aware of it until they try to stop drinking and find it really difficult. Those people get angry because it prevents cognitive dissonance arriving in their mind, right? Like, they do not want cognitive dissonance. I started off by saying on this podcast, Raising Good Humans, they were talking about alcohol researcher, and her guest was Gary Vaynerchuk, and they were talking about how we need to meet in the middle. Like, we can't be using alcohol as an example, a teetotal or an absolute pisshead. It needs to be somewhere in the middle. And this is something that that the cognitive dissonance and the way that we banish it or we silence it in our mind is because of this very phenomenon, right? Like, we have to say it is acceptable. Like, we cannot say, alcohol's really bad, it's really terrible, it kills 3.3 million people a year, but I think I'm okay with it. Or yesterday I slept with someone behind my wife's back when I was really drunk, or I hit my wife when I was really drunk, or I lost my phone when I was really drunk, or I lost my job when I was really drunk, and this keeps happening all the time, but it's okay, I can just drink moderately. Your brain cannot deal with that, right? It has to say everything's okay. Everything's okay. Drinking alcohol is okay. So you bury the problem. And then if somebody comes to you and it's like, yeah, I don't drink alcohol, and you start getting on your soapbox and you start trying to help the world by telling them and sharing your opinion, people who are alcohol reliant don't want to hear that opinion a lot of the time, right? They don't want to hear it. So this is where the anger comes from. The anger is there to prevent the cognitive dissonance from turning up. And that probably for a lot of people who are alcohol reliant, the last time that cognitive dissonance was around was when you first started drinking. When, for me, for example, you're a 14-year-old that puts a lot of spirits into a bottle or gets a couple of cans of lager, drinks it, it tastes absolutely disgusting. You know it does. The cognitive dissonance starts to come up. Hey, why am I drinking this stuff that adults say is so great when it tastes so fucking disgusting? What is going on? And you actually silence the cognitive dissonance, because what's more important is when you look around in your little group of other 14-year-olds that are drinking or smoking, the fear of not going through with it is so intense that you do it anyway, until eventually the taste, in this case, just becomes normal. The taste becomes quote unquote nice, and our body adjusts to it, because it's really important that our body and our mind feel safe. And some people say sometimes, how is it that somebody who is addicted to alcohol can keep going back to it even though their life is so fucked up? And the reason is they feel so safe, right? They feel so safe being a drinker because they know where they are, they know what they're doing. But if you start to tell them that drinking is bad, they start to feel really unsafe. If they start to see the liquid lie unraveling between their eyes, they do not like it, right? It starts to feel really uncomfortable for them. So I hope that helps. Let me know if you've got any questions on it at all. And I'll catch you soon. All right, take care.